last presentation of the day, and we move on and we go to Africa, to Senegal. Here, once again, we are listening to two persons speaking together, maybe even more than two, or more than one for sure, where we are going to be having with us the Benedictine Father Olivier-Marie, together with Miss Dr. Armel Ayegnon and Father Sarr, who has studied in St. Anselmo. He studied liturgy, and where he teaches in the Liturgical Institute. Ms. Lennon actually has an expertise in ethnomusicology with a PhD degree on the kora, which is a traditional African instrument, which I believe they are setting up. Now, this intervention, this presentation has to do with the presence of the Benedictine order in Senegal, in the Abbey of Keur Moussa, and it tries to highlight what? Well, it tries to refer to the Oasis of cultures and the charism and the creativity of the Benedictine friars that live in this abbey in Senegal. So, Father, you have the floor.
Grazie per la presentazione, grazie anche per la...
Thank you for this introduction. Thank you for your invitation. We would like to start with a little introduction from Father Armel.
Allora, grazie.
So thank you. Now our presentation will be in French, also to be able to speak together with my collaborator. So if you need translation, please put on your headset. So we are suggesting here to look at what is his experience and ours. So we want to do so making a four-hands presentation of a friar who has lived the Benedictine charism and who can express the creativity of the Kora. And after that, I'll give the floor to Dr. A lay musician musical expert who will be helping us do this rereading from an academic perspective, but also from a cultural perspective. Now, Senegal. Senegal, for those of you who might not know it geographically, you might not know where it is. So here you have it. It's found on the northeastern side of Africa. And the abbey is 60 kilometers away from Garda, which is the capital. Now, we would like to give you an overview of the historical context of the 60s in this geographical area to understand why we have chosen to use this instrument during our liturgy. And there are a few important events that need to be highlighted. First of all, among the major events, there's the independence of the West Africa countries. That was back in 1960, the 4th of April, 1960. The 60s in general are important also because of the Second Vatican Council on the 25th of December 1961 by Pope John 23rd. But also during this time, during the 60s, the monastery of Keur Moussa was created and inaugurated on the 23rd of June 1963. Now, why and how did all this happen? Mr. Marcel Lefebvre, who was the vicar, apostolic vicar back in 1947, and then he was the first metropolitan archbishop of Dakar, was the one who desired for a monastic and contemplative presence to exist in a Muslim environment. And this is a memory. I would like to remind you that actually Senegal has a Muslim majority. And Catholics normally they state that's the common use is to say that Christians only pray on Sundays, since that Muslims pray 5 times a day every day. Now that was what he was told, and so this was his answer. He said, "Then you know what? I'll invite people of prayer, men of prayer, who will show you that that we pray more than you." And then the foundation took place, which happened in the Salem, in the city of Salem. You have the picture here on the right, on the left actually. And then before the council, 9 monks were sent from the Salem Abbey, a monastery, and sent to the Abbey to settle in Senegal. So they will just live as they did in their mother house. They will sing the Gregorian chants, and they will use the harmonium or other instruments in order to accompany their morning and evening prayers. However, in the meantime, the Second Vatican Council took place, and the number 119 of the Sacrosanctum Concilium stated, since in some regions, especially mission countries, there are peoples with their own musical tradition, then there was an invitation to somehow own those musical traditions and give this music the esteem and the proper place, both in forming their religious sense and in adapting to the cult adopting the cult to their genius. So with number 119, the friars implemented this invitation, and they decided to integrate this instrument in their own liturgy. This is how slowly they move towards an enculturation of the kora, which is the African lute harp. The kora, actually, that's how it's pronounced, will be modernized and will evolve because the kora, it was needed for the kora to be ready and efficient all day long because it was an instrument, it's a string instrument, so it's very sensitive, and there were fluctuations that would take place before the liturgy. So the instrument had to be all ready to be used. That's why it was modernized, and the traditional instrument evolved to the final result that you see now. That will be explained in detail later on. Now, this is the person that introduced this enculturation, who passed away 3 years ago. His name was Father Dominique Hatada. You might have seen his picture on the left when he had just received the traditional Kora 50 years earlier. And 50 years later, you have another picture of him with a modern Kora. The creativity around the Kora is at the service of the Benedictine Charism, as prayer has an important role in our liturgy. It was really paramount for this instrument to be efficient, and this is the reason why the monks opened a workshop to produce these instruments, and you can see here some pictures of the workshop. This instrument is used during the whole day from sunset to sundown, and is used for worship. But the important and interesting thing is that this instrument will not only be used in Senegal. How this instrument has gone beyond the borders of Senegal, and is being used now in other communities outside the African continent. Here we have the Dominican of Durban, for example, in France. We have here the Dominicans of Orvais in France. We have the Cistercian nuns of Kismaros in Hungary, the Poor Clares of Cormontel in France. And then we have the community of Anawin in France. We have the Carmelites of Argentinil, of Waterloo in Belgium, and the Tiberias community in Lithuania, who are using the instrument as well. And now I'll just give the floor to my colleague, Dr. Armel Ayegnon, who will be offering you a reading of the intercultural role of the Kora. Good morning to you all. So as we have the opportunity to have the instrument here with us, I would like to introduce it to you. So the reading that we are offering of this process of enculturation allows us to say that the genius of this community is revealed through a dialogue between the monastery and the world around it, and also within the community, the members of the abbey, the monks. In order to accompany their liturgy, the monks entrusted themselves to different African instruments, traditional instruments. On the picture, you can see more than one, and among these, we see the kora, which is not only a musical object because of its complexity. This is an object that also witnesses something about the Mandinga culture. The Mandinga culture is the original people of the Kora, which is the one that lives in the northern side of the Ivory Coast, and then it has been these people who has kept alive tangible and intangible elements of their culture, the Kora being one of them, because it's an element that has been used by different ethnic cultures and groups in which they recognize themselves. So the Kora today is a way of expressing the identity of these peoples. And by adopting the Kora as a main instrument, musical instrument, the monks have allowed this instrument to evolve also from a technical perspective, which has allowed for musicians to be able to leave their natural and their original reality and surrounding, and to be known at an international level. So you can see on the screen you have two different choras. One is a chora where you have a leather lace that keeps the strings together. In the other one, the lacing is different. So you see you have the chora first, it was made in wood, and then also all the elements were in wood, and then the different elements for the tuning became were made in iron. So because the wooden ones wouldn't allow for the chorus to be in tune throughout the whole mass. That's why they had to find a new way to improve it. So they moved on from using wood to using iron and chromatic iron, and it's like they were using also what we use on a piano, the black keys. Well, that's exactly what they used, and this actually was added to give a half a tone, or to add the opportunity of increasing sound of half a tone or decrease it of half a tone. And those black keys actually add it's an addition to the musical characteristic of this instrument. This allows for the musician to play the traditional musical scale, but also to use the Western musical scale. So this is a chora that works more or less like a piano, but that at the same time remains faithful to the original chora, the traditional chora. Now, the third thing that we need to notice in the technological developments of this instrument is that the monks were faithful to the tradition, and while trying to do so, with the general appearance of the instrument and the know-how, today, a traditional musician, professional musician can actually use this instrument, and other musicians. I am not I am not part of the secular tradition, but then anybody could be able to use the more evolved version. As you could see from the pictures, there are many communities that play this instrument, but then the changes that have been made allow for everyone to be able to play it, even though there were enhancements. So there was a full respect of the traditional culture from that where it originates, which is very important when doing anything. We are here being very respectful of the original culture. Now, I would like to add one last thing. When the monks tried to somehow step away from the traditional know-how, somehow they would just go around back to it, because and this it was the result of a deep reflection, because the traditional instrument used, and those who would make those instruments used the material they had at hand. And when the friars or the monks tried to change it using other instruments, they were using the pumpkin, for example. They tried to use the pumpkin, but the pumpkin didn't work because it broke easily. So they went back to wood, because then they realized that when they would change the main elements, the core elements of the chora, they wouldn't just work as well as the original ones. So they would just always go back to the original materials. And all this experimenting allowed those musicians to be able to keep playing the instrument just as they knew how. There was a new repertoire, liturgical repertoire, that was actually added. Obviously, a new way of playing, and also new scores were also invented. The monks also invented new ways and new pieces that could be played with this instrument. We can consider that this is one of the first scores connected with this instrument, the one that you see here. So this is all part of an ongoing dialogue between the communities and the monks living in this abbey. So this dialogue has to do with the monastic heritage, but also has to do with the deep research and respect for the local heritage. In the friars in Keur Moussa got in touch with people who had tangible and intangible knowledge of the Korah, and they kept all that when using it within their liturgy. All this has been integrated. It has been included in our archives, and this monastic activity has a cataloging space that allows for everyone to access it. Now, the use of this instrument witnesses the possibility of a traditional instrument to survive over time and guarantees the survival of this tradition, of this heritage over time, because of this desire to preserve it through dialogue. Cultural dialogue protects the important elements that have been somehow exchanged or have been shared throughout this dialogue, and includes traditional elements to the repertoire, to the new reality brought by the monks, and also the monks add their own creativity that goes through, or that actually keeps in mind respect, the respect for the tradition. And tradition and respect are the key words in this conversation between the monks and the local peoples. This dialogue goes through the identification of the cultural traits of our contemporaries. And to conclude, the creativity of those monks, of that first group of monks, can actually represent a very interesting dialogue where every person that is involved somehow comes out of it full of light. Brighter than before. And this is what an important dialogue brings about. This silent dialogue generates new cultural chords that actually add up to the already existing ones. And these cultural chords add to the mythological reality, but also to the needs of every human being, every man, every woman, whoever or whatever their origin is. Thank you for listening.